Hi, I'm Mark Sumner, CEO and founder of Robertson Sumner. Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast, where we will share learnings, best practices, and failures with some of the biggest names in the IT industry. Hello, I'm Mark Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I'm lucky enough to have in person, which is the first person I've had it back post-COVID or during the crisis, Chief Executive Officer Ross Teague of RMTH Consulting Limited. How we doing?
Very good, Mark. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here in person.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. You are actually the first person I've had in, must be, Anthony, 4 months, is it?
At least.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Wow.
It's been...
Privilege.
Yeah, so it's been great to actually finally get back in the studio and actually see someone in person, which is great. And obviously closing the COVID series that we've got as well. So the first person we've got in since then. So the reason I wanted to get you in, Ross, was because I heard through the grapevine, or not through the grapevine, actually, I did hear that you were the crazy person, or one of the only people I know that would actually do the stupid thing to actually start a business in COVID. Now, I don't know if that was planned or if it was you were starting to do that before, but I'm hoping you can give the listeners a bit of a view of how this all come about, because you've literally just started in June.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, was it planned or was it spontaneous? A bit of both, I think, is the answer to that. Is it considered, or am I nuts? Probably a bit of both as well, I think, is probably the answer to that. But no, I always wanted to get to a stage where I had something else to sort of pour my heart and soul into and get going again. And during the sort of COVID lockdown period, where some of the consulting stuff I was doing dried up, I thought, you know what, there's an opportunity here. There's a time opportunity to prepare, structure, do all of those things. So when we do launch and the economy starts to come back, we're in a better position. So it was considered. I accelerated it, if I'm honest, because of a bit of boredom.
Really?
I needed to do something. I needed to be, I like being busy. I like being active. And so far so good. We're having a good time. We've got some good engagement. We're got some good traction. And I love startup mentality as well. Anyway, so that's the fun bit for me. So we're having a good time. So yeah, bit considered, also a bit mental, I think, is the right response.
Absolutely. So, but this isn't the first time you've started a business, is it? So,
No.
you started a business and then you sold out. So give us a bit of a background of how you started that business and what actually happened in the end and how you exited.
Yeah, so I started my last business when I was 26 years old, and I started it on the back of working for some companies that were doing a similar thing to what my business ultimately did. But I was kind of at that kind of naive young age where I thought I knew everything. Now know absolutely that I don't, and boy, I didn't know bugger all then, if truth be told. But I had that kind of gung ho attitude that I thought, let's start a business in professional services and so on and so forth. Because the guys I'd been working for previously, I just felt they weren't doing it right, and I could do it better. Luckily, I had an incredible mentor that partnered me in that business, and that's my dad. Been around a long time, so all of my lack of knowledge he made up with his experience. And I guess my enthusiasm and gusto and his experience and steadying hand, we built something of real value, and we did it well. And I think, and if I look back on that journey of that business, the learning years, i.e., the first sort of 3 or 4, which certainly weren't the earning years of that business, were some of the most fun, if truth be told. They were, we were out punting our coverage regularly. We were doing innovative, cool things. We were incredibly agile. We were incredibly fast at doing the stuff that we did. And it really helped us grow. I think we also, again, with my father's help, we run the business very prudently. We didn't overinvest. We didn't amass debt in the business. We run it very much of, if we can't afford it, we don't do it mentality. And that's very much ingrained in me, actually, as a business leader and a business owner. But what that did is it gave us sustainability and it gave us longevity to be able to grow. So, and as I said, the early part of building that journey was a lot of fun. It was all a lot of fun. And as we grew, my role as the CEO changed from what's a CEO in a startup business, really. You're in many sense you're the salesman, you're the accountant, you're the tea and pot washer, you're everything.
Yeah.
But I quite like that. I don't mind that. It's not a problem for me. In fact, I saw a report recently, which was I think it's from Cranfield Business School, that talks about the stages that leaders go through, from sort of artisan to hero to meddler, right up to sort of strategic, where you work on the business and not in the business. And if I'm honest, brutally honest with me, I think the furthest I ever got was meddler. I don't think I ever got truly strategic, if I'm honest. Now I'm back in hero spot, which is where I need to be right now in terms of where we are in this business. But I would say, in terms of my skills and my talents, and being brutally honest, I'm not sure that I ever really truly made it to the top right quadrant of strategic in that sense. I was very much the come in, chuck a few hand grenades, and disappear again. And
do you think though? Do you think, if you've got the gusto to start a business, of course it's great to be strategic, it's great to have, work on the business, all that sort of stuff. But if you haven't got the energy and the gusto and the actual drive to get it going, there is no business to be strategic on anyway. So
you can be strategically bankrupt.
Yeah, and when I sort of hear people say that, I've had a business for 20 years. I'm definitely not strategic, but I'd like to think I'd execute. And I just think sometimes, execution eats strategy for breakfast, sort of thing. You can actually move things, actually doing things, instead of actually just saying, oh, actually let's do some strategic thinking, sort of thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I think what's important for me is to have a strategy, which are the things that you want to be famous for.
Yeah.
Right. The things that you want to excel in, and the things that you want to build your sort of brand around. That's important. But I think you need the agility and the flexibility and the energy around that says, yeah, we've got this strategy, but there's enough, it's malleable enough, that means that we're not so draconian and struck to it that we're missing opportunities. Because the other thing, and I think, the dreaded COVID-19 word, I think what that's demonstrated to a lot of people is that we're not truly as in control of things as we think we are. So if we're not agile, we can't adapt. We can't, which actually human beings are incredibly good at. If you look in history, we're probably the best species at doing that. Adapting. If we don't do that, take that same philosophy in business, then we'll die out. And there's been many great companies over the years. You've seen them that dominated markets that they were in, but they didn't stay current with the evolution of the new technology. And ultimately they get eclipsed and they disappear. And there's some fantastic names that do that. So again, I think in a small business, in a startup environment, energy is critical, agility is critical. I think speed of execution, and really being incredibly customer focused is really important. But within the confines of that strategy, that what your business stands for and what you want to be and what you want to be famous for, as it were. So
yeah, so obviously you've done this business once, you've obviously grown it with your dad, and obviously executed, obviously successful, and then you've obviously sold it to Exclusive Networks, and you obviously moved on. So you said about boredom. Now, most people, they'd be absolutely exhausted about what you've already done. They'd think, you build it up, blood, sweat and tears, you put your heart and soul into it, you've got the holy grail. That's what most people think, well, actually I can exit and sell it. But now you're doing it again, Ross. So what made you even start even thinking about that? Like, shouldn't you be playing golf and just enjoying yourself?
Yeah, I mean, for those listeners that know me and have played golf with me, they'll know that that's not my greatest strength. But I do try. I think for me, working and building a business and doing all those kind of things is fun. I think, I've never worked in any other industry other than the IT industry, so I'm going to be a bit biased here. But I think we're incredibly fortunate with the kind of people we get to meet, the kind of places and things we get to do, the fact we're always immersed in new technologies and these kind of things. So I think we're perhaps more fortunate than we realise sometimes. And I think for me, I think it was a process of really realising and working out. I'm now at a stage in my career whereby I've almost got a blank sheet of paper again, and I can really think about what motivates me, what excites me, and ultimately that reflects in the quality of the output that I give it. And the truth of the matter is that I like the startup. I like the innovation, the newness of it, and the fact that if we don't just get on and do it, it doesn't happen, right? I think that one of the hardest things I think in a startup business is there's no natural momentum to the company. Once you get to a certain size and you've got a certain track record, you've got a certain brand, for want of a better term, there's a natural momentum that the company keeps rolling. If I don't, and my small team of people that I have don't rock up and give it 100% every day right now, there is no momentum. The company stops.
There's no team. There's no company.
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing. Yeah.
So, and I like that. I like that whole kind of, building it. And our plan is to grow quickly. Our plan is to, bring more resources in quickly and so on, in a prudent and considered way. Not to be reckless. And that whole building, that whole, sort of, making the business into something that is of real value. I'm not talking about monetary value. I'm talking about it's got a brand that is recognised, and that brand is associated with quality. It's a sort of place where people look at and go, I'd like to work in that company. It's a place where our customers are pleased to do business with us because we do a great job and we go above. And that's the real value to me. And I think if we focus on that piece and do that bit, well, then a byproduct of that is money, right? But it's very much a secondary thing. The real value is in all of those other things, as far as I'm concerned, and I like the building of that.
Yeah. What would you say are the sort of main challenges in starting a business? Because there'll be a lot of listeners out there thinking they're at home, they've either been potentially made redundant, they've been furloughed, or they're questioning the company they're working for now because the world has changed.
Yeah.
COVID has made people rethink their whole life strategy, what they're actually going to do and what's important. And there might be people out there that are actually thinking, oh, actually, maybe I would start a company. But what would you say was the main challenges for you if you actually had an idea of thinking, yeah, I want to start a company now, and what's the challenges you're experiencing?
Yeah, well, I think different people are in different sort of financial situations. That's obviously a consideration. Everyone's got bills to pay, and whether you've got family and kids or you haven't, all those kind of things. I do. I have 4 kids, so my life budget's a pretty big one, even just to stand still. So I think that's a consideration. But I think a bigger consideration for me is that self-belief and that confidence to say, I can do this, right? I can do it. And I think one of the things I love about American entrepreneurs, perhaps slightly over entrepreneurs in this country, is that almost if you've not had a failure on your record in America, you're almost not considered a true entrepreneur. You kind of that failure is almost like a badge of honor. Where I don't think it is here. I think a failure in here is sort of
a bit of shame there.
Yes, yeah.
Which is wrong, isn't it? Really.
Well, yeah. When you're pushing the boundaries and you're trying something new, the only way you get better is failure, right? It's and I think if my advice to anyone that be looking at starting a business would be seriously think about what you want to do and why you think you'll be successful at it, and what you bring to that. Don't get too hung up on size of markets and market opportunity and all that analysis stuff. That can come later. Would be really, how do I get from point A to point B, which is getting from pre-revenue to a business that's making some revenue and covering some overhead. That's hurdle number 1. Worry about hurdle number 2 when you're on the track and running. If you're obviously getting private equity investment or something like that, it's a different analogy. I'm talking about starting with your own money and your own sort of blood, sweat and tears. And I think, and have the confidence to really back yourself and go for it. And I think more people can do it than they realise. It's that fear factor that perhaps hold people back. Say, what if I am a failure? And let's be honest, we all fail at certain things in life. None of us are perfect. We just mentioned my golf game earlier, but we all fail at certain things in life, and I think you've got to keep pushing it and so on. So, and when you make a mistake, dust yourself off, get up and go again, and hopefully you don't make that same mistake again. And I know in my previous business and already in this business, in fact, some of my best stories are my mistakes. And real faux pas that I made and so on and so forth. Luckily, I've not repeated too many of them. But out of some of those faux pas come great innovation, actually. And we sort of changed the way we did things. And so confidence, have a clear understanding of how you get from point A to point B, which is your first real hurdle. Worry about C, D, and E later on. Get yourself rolling and really back yourself and go for it. If you're in a financial position that enables you to give you that headroom. Because I think one of the things that is really apparent starting a business in the middle of one of the worst economic situations, I think, in living memory, if not the worst, is that money's going to be tighter. Customers are going to look to invest differently I won't say they're not going to invest, because there's always an economy, it always moves, but they look to invest differently, which means you might need to be a little bit more patient. It might take a little bit longer. Decisions might take a little bit longer. People doing new projects and innovative stuff that you were talking to them about, they might love the vision, love the dream, but actually they want to be a bit more cautious with their approach right now.
Okay, so tell me a bit more about RMTH. So as a consultancy firm, what's the technology you're offering? And is it different from what you did before?
Yeah, very, very, very different, but with some similarities. So what we try to do with RMTH, and what we really stand for, is that, and the reason we called it RMTH Consulting is really not this a classic consultancy business. Consulting is part of what we do, but it's really our approach and our methodology is very much a consultative type approach. So digital transformation is the thing that we're really into. And one of the things that I've noticed, and a lot of my background is selling into the channel and working with channel partners and SIs and VARs and those kind of things. And what I noticed working with many of these guys, and there's some brilliant companies out there, absolutely brilliant companies that, you know, incredible what they do. But one of the things that I think we can be a little bit guilty of in technology sometimes is almost selling technology for technology's sake, and almost leading with the technology, leading with the speeds, feeds, the wows. So what reason we called it consulting was that our approach is very different. Our approach is very much, let's understand the wants and the needs and the desires of the company. A lot of people start with the challenges. That's a regressive negative term. I want to talk about progressive things. So where are we? Where do we want to get to? And from an overarching business strategy. Then we want to look at what that journey is, and we want to look at what assets do we have that support that journey. So those assets will be people. They might be, money's always an asset. They might be process. They might be structure. They might be tech stack. They might be real estate, for example, which I think is going to become even more apparent with the COVID thing. And we look at those assets that they've got. So understand the strategy, look at the assets, what can we repurpose? And then what we look to do is introduce technology in that helps them achieve those goals and those desires, but not at the expense of what they've already got. And I think that's quite important, is what can we repurpose, what can we evolve, what can we do? And a lot of technology now, and our real technology focus, which is really sort of cloud, infrastructure, mobility, and security, which is really the technologies that ultimately underpin a digital transformation strategy, which is about how do we maximize the value in people's data, right, in real terms. But I think a lot of the technologies we're looking at there in those areas are very much as a service technology. But a lot of customers have a lot of infrastructure that they don't really harness the full power out of. So our approach, the reason we call it consulting, is our approach is to look at, to say, the journey, what underpins it, and how can we introduce new technology and new services. I'm a services guy. That's my background, professional consulting, managed services. And how can we introduce that to ultimately drive the customer's journey forward? That's what we're trying to do.
Now, the digital transformation has, my God, has it accelerated in the last 4 months, you know, more than it has in the last 2 or 3 years. Did that play a factor in you thinking, actually, let's get this business moving quicker?
Yeah, I actually came up with this vision 4 years ago. I had this vision of what I remember sitting in a pub in Wokingham with my advisor, Gary, and we were just having a catch up and a chat and so on and so forth. And I said to him then, I've got a vision for the next company I build, Gary. I've got a vision for what I want it to be, and so on and so forth. We use different terminology then, right? Because terminology moves on. But fundamentally, it was the same rationale, what we wanted to do. But obviously, I was engaged in what I was doing, so we didn't do anything with it. We parked it. But I just saw, while sat at home like many other people, with not a lot happening in the world, you know, with the COVID lockdown and so on and so forth, and the only news was gloom and doom and depressing and all of those kind of things. I guess I saw an opportunity, and the opportunity was the way we do business and so on and so forth was changing anyway. All this really did was give it a bit of a kick up the backside and move it on a bit faster. Right. Is my opinion, right? A lot of people might disagree with that. It's my opinion. So I thought, well, what we're trying to do around digital transformation, making organisations more digitally savvy, making their IT infrastructure and what they're doing more agile, more flexible, all of those kind of things. Actually, a lot of the companies that are struggling in the start of this lockdown is because they don't have that strategy. If they had that strategy, they would be far more. So a lot of people panic bought at the start of it. Laptops run out and all of those kind of things, but they panic bought as a tactic. Now what we've got to try and do is go back to them and say, you've bought all this infrastructure, hence my point about repurposing assets, saying, now let's try and work that into some sort of strategy. And a strategy is quite a grandioso word. It doesn't have to be grandioso. It can be, it can be as, broad or as narrow as possible, but there should be something in terms of, a vision that we're trying to achieve. And that's part of what we want to do as our consultative approach.
Because there's terms banded around in the channel like trusted partner and consulting and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of people I seem to see that advising end users seem to be very much like you said before, pushing technology or getting refreshes, or you've got to move to the cloud, you've got to get cloud phones or cloud infrastructure or whatever it is. Why do you think there isn't more consultancy in the market? Because is it the pace of technology changing that these resellers or these partners or MSPs they don't really know what to advise, or is it just there's a lack of understanding actually moving into consultancy? Because I'm seeing it both. I see a lot of partners pushing technology when they don't really know the technology themselves. They don't even really know if it's going to work or be suitable for the business.
Yeah. I think the challenge with the term consultancy is that consultancy by its very nature has kind of a premium associated with the term, and a lot of companies see the term consultancy. And so one of the big challenges in the channel has always been what's consultancy and what's pre-sales, right? What's free and what's not, fundamentally, right?
Yeah.
And
everyone wants the free.
Customers want the free. The channel wants to sell consultancy, and rightly so. And we're no different. But there's that balance of what's pre-sales, what's consultancy. I think the slight challenge with building a kind of consultative business and the approach that we're trying to take, and one of the reasons I did this as a startup rather than acquiring another business to transform it, is that we're geared and designed to play a very long game here. And the consultative sale, where we're doing all this information gathering and so on and so forth, is slow. It's a lengthy process. As I build my sales team over the weeks and months and years, I'm going to need a particular type of salesperson that is looking for building that sort of long-term approach, because the things that we're looking to sell to our customers are very much sort of as a service type technology and as a service services, which means it's monthly billing, it's annuity based, and it's all of those things recurring.
Yeah.
But it's less heavy on the capex and the capital projects. Now, a lot of organisations and partners in the channel, particularly some of the ones that have been around a long time, and again, in my opinion, their business is very geared to that sort of capital expenditure, that product, that product sale, or that project delivery. And then the managed services pull through is actually quite a small proportion of their revenue. Quite often a very big profit contributor, but often a small proportion of the revenue. And I think that drives behaviours. And I think the behaviour then is that we've got to do this tech refresh. We've got to do this. I think also there's some pressure there from vendors as well with their partners, where they've got numbers to hit as well. And I completely understand and accept that. And that's going to come in to our businesses too, to a point as we move forward. But I think it's really that approach of we've built our business and set our business up with this kind of almost capex with a bit of opex mentality. Whereas what I'm building is an opex, and opex, and if we do no capex, I'm okay with that. The reality is we will do some, but it's this sort of opex mentality, which means it affords us the time to be a bit more consultative, a bit more the process a bit more drawn out in our sort of considered sales approach, and that's what we want to do. And I've got a myriad of charts in terms of plotting the axis of when we hockey stick and all of those kind of things. Who knows which ones are right and wrong? Only time will be truly tell that. But that's why I wanted to do this as a net new business with no legacy, with no baggage. And I don't mean that in any way derogatory, but I just think in changing the ethos of something that was existing to what I'm trying to do, that might have been a really hard approach, and actually may have cost more time and money than just doing it right from the get-go.
Yeah. Do you see it now? And it's interesting from the channel chats I've done over the last 2 or 3 months. most companies now are pivoting to try and offer pay-as-you-go models, pay-as-you-go or consumption-based models, etc., etc. Mainly maybe because that maybe for finance options, etc. But do you see now that IT is going to go that way? It's almost going to be as a service, desktop as a service, unified community as a service, cloud as a service, everything is a service. Because I actually thought about myself. I actually spoke to Anthony Byford about this. Recruitment as a service.
Yep.
Actually, not doing big upfront costs and actually doing it over a monthly period. So, do you think most companies are looking now, thinking actually, whatever service I've got, unified comms, security, whatever it is, a CRM system, they'll do it as a monthly subscription or a consumption-based model?
I think so, yes. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that, really. I think one, the market is driving customers to that end in terms of the way they sell more consumption models, and more of the vendors are moving to more as a service type environment. I think that's a huge factor in that, in terms of it's for example, if someone wants to put in an ERP system or something now, it's almost impossible to buy it. You can't buy it, right? You almost rent it all the time. So I think there's some market trend there. I think there's some behaviours that we have in our personal life in terms of how we've got used to operating our own personal lives in a far more consumption based, with things like Netflix and so on and so forth. And so I think that has a bearing on it. I think the other thing that has an impact on it, which is really quite huge, and that is money's still incredibly cheap around the world. And while money is cheap, the ability for organisations to borrow and amass debt, for want of a better term, and the interest rates being very, very low, it means that their sort of corporation structure from a financial perspective is more linked to this very, very cheap debt, of which it services on a monthly, quarterly, or whatever basis. So it's almost trying to align its business to that. I think where that could potentially change in the future, and this is a bit of an off the wall prediction, but where it could potentially change in the future, and that is if governments start taxing corporations on their non-active surplus cash. So if they look at organisations saying you're sitting on X billion dollars of cash, we're going to start taxing it unless you do something with it. Then we may see a market trend where big corporations want to go back to saying, no, I don't want to rent it anymore, I want to buy it because I've got to spend my cash. But no one's doing that yet. But maybe post-COVID, when we need to raise tax revenues, we might. But that would be that might, in my opinion, that might force a systemic change in terms of how FDs and CEOs and CFOs and all those things look at the business, saying, well, hang about, we're stockpiling cash, we're getting taxed on it. We've got to change the way we do it. And but these cycles take years and years and years and years to go through, and I don't think we finished this cycle yet. But if that happens, and I don't know that it will, I've got no inside information, but if it does, that might force a change. But certainly for the short to medium term foreseeable future, as a service is how people like to consume stuff, and as I said, the market is forcing people that way.
I'm interested in this term that we spoke about earlier, about a sharing economy, because I'm looking at a company like yours. I'm thinking you could maybe, you've got the reputation to be able to get yourself in the door, and you've got the contacts, etc. But they might be thinking, oh, can this guy compete, or can this company compete with X big company? Now, you mentioned a term earlier about sharing economy. Elaborate on that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think I try and always look at I'm a big sort of student of history, and I think you can quite often predict the future from what's happened in the past, because I think stuff moves in cycles. I'm also a believer in the way we live our lives personally and the way we live our lives in business, particularly with probably millennials and up generation. There's the whole way in which they operate is far more fused than it was perhaps in generations gone by, in terms of work was one thing, you wore a suit and so on and so forth, and you tie, and that's what you did, and then your social life was very different. They're far more intertwined now. So thinking about the sharing economy, if we think about our life, right, and how we live our life, we, not that we could do it too much at the moment, but we book a flight to go on holiday with our family, right? The place that we book to stay in, we book through Airbnb, right? So we're taking our precious time and we're going to book a place that we've seen a picture on the internet. We're going to trust it implicitly. No tour rep or anything's gone to check it out. We just trust it implicitly from the picture. So our valuable time with our loved ones, we're going to go into this place which we've never seen before. we're going to get an Uber to the airport, which is a private individual in their private car, right, that drives us there. And or if we drive ourselves, we might use one of these sharing apps where you can park on somebody's drive close to Heathrow Airport or Gatwick Airport, whatever it is. When we want food delivered, right, we go Deliveroo or Uber Eats or Just Eat or any of those kind of things. So the way we live our lives now, we consume the sharing economy all the time, and we do it completely subconsciously in many cases. What my theory is in business and how we operate in business is that organizations, and I'll refer back to this word agile, and I think this is so important moving forward, is speed of execution and agility. It's very hard to turn an oil tanker. It takes a long time by its very nature. You can turn a speedboat much faster. So if you can have a speedboat or a collection of speedboats that can do the same things, all of which are best of breed in what they do, and you bring them together, under a standard set of deliverables, a standard ethos, and so on and so forth, not only can you deliver in a far more agile way to your customer, there's lots of cost benefits in that because you're not carrying so much overhead and so on and so forth. But actually what we're really doing is we're saying, these guys are best of breed at this, these guys are best of breed at this, these guys are best of breed at that. We're best of breed at what we do. We're stronger as a collective than we are as a subset of individuals. So one of the whole, and I guess the way I've done business over the years is always very much in this kind of partnership type mentality. And I think this is sort of partnership mentality 2.0, if you like, and really this is looking at this sharing economy. There's lots of great companies out there, some incredible ones, and I'm fortunate enough to know many of them, which means that when we talk to our customers and we're taking them on these journeys of really helping them deliver what they want to deliver and driving the business outcome that they want, I can pull on what I know are the best of breed organizations that can support me in a particular field or a particular technology set that ultimately drives the value to my customer.
With that sharing economy mentality, now that might have been done with, let's say, friends or colleagues, trusted partners. Would you ever reach out to a customer or a company that you thought, and I'm talking as your company, RMTH. Would you ever reach out to a company that you have no friend there, you have no contact, and you actually think, actually that company could help me? Because normally it was like, actually, oh, my friend Joe could sort you out, and my friend Billy the plumber could sort you out, and my friend Joe the builder could sort you out. Almost like in the sharing economy, and that was like a nucleus of people, of contacts.
Yeah.
But those contacts can only go so far, can't they? So would you reach out to someone you didn't know?
One of the biggest challenges is, and I will answer the question. I'm not going to go around the houses and try and avoid it. I will answer the question. One of the biggest challenges is, how do you get heard in a loud room, right? How do you make sure that your voice gets heard? Yeah, shout. But no, how do you sort of stand out in a crowd? And I think if you only ever do business with the people that you know, you never learn anything new. If you only ever do what you always did, you never evolve. So you have to, and one of the things that I personally have always tried to do a lot of, I've always tried to be a real sort of open networker. I like talking to people. I like getting on the phone. I like understanding, and because of that, and the sort of legwork that goes into that, I have a pretty good sized network. And what I quite often find is that within my network, they have, supplementary networks. So it's not just necessarily my network. It's people that work with me's network or my trusted partners network and so on and so forth. So I think, there was some statistic, I don't know how true it is, that everybody's only 3 or 4 people, or 3 or 4 connections between everybody and everybody else. I don't know if that's true or not. It seems pretty logical to me, but the same thing goes. So would I trust somebody that I didn't know and so on and so forth? I wouldn't trust them without a degree of due diligence, no. But I would give them the opportunity to have that conversation with me and us go on that journey together and do the necessary due diligence to see if they're, because as I say, with new technologies, I was talking to a company just last week that was talking about some of the stuff they're doing with blockchain technology, and they were talking about how they can utilize blockchain in a medical capacity to move patient records and so on and so forth within a trust. It's uber secure and so on. So, and people really think about blockchain with Bitcoin and all that kind of stuff. But actually, this application for blockchain was incredible. It meant you could move really sensitive stuff, right? Patient records around within a trust and so on, using this particular application of blockchain technology. that is just could be game changing. Now, if I'd never had that conversation, I know bugger all about blockchain, right? And I'm trying to learn it, and I'm upskilling myself, and that sort of stuff. But I don't know a lot about it. If I'd never had that conversation with these guys, I'd never have learned that story, and more importantly, understand the application, because almost undoubtedly, as we go on our journey over the next X number of years, that kind of technology or the next version of it, however it plays out, is going to become more prevalent in some capacity. So I think if you don't have the conversation, if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't listen and go on a voyage of discovery, you run the risk of missing great opportunities. But you can't be completely gung-ho. There needs to be a good degree of due diligence, and there needs to be a good degree of fact finding and so on and so forth to make sure that if you're pitting your reputation with your client on somebody you don't know, that could be a risky thing to do. Everyone's done it at some stage in their life, and we've all got good stories and horror stories of it. But I think you've got to, as you said, in order to understand what is new and go on the voyage of discovery, you've got to put yourself out there and try and have the discussions. Otherwise, you don't learn anything.
No, totally agree. One theme I wanted to talk to you about was about culture, because for a small company that's starting up last month, you are the culture, your team's the culture, you're obviously starting to build that. Now, there's obviously companies out there now that their culture was ping pong tables and pool tables and all that sort of stuff. Their culture has been decimated because they're at home and they've got a dispersed workforce. Do you see this as now a bit of a level playing field to actually sort of think, actually, I've got just as good an opportunity to build a culture as Softcat, who have 1,500 staff?
Yeah, it's an incredible job they've done of building that culture in that business as well. It's quite unique, really, in some respects. If I'm honest, building a culture with a completely dispersed remote workforce, and bear in mind, in my previous job, I had staff on 4 continents, so I'm used to having a remote workforce, is really challenging for me as an individual. And I think that's because I'm quite a social person. I like the human interaction. I like the banter, and I like those kind of things, and openly encourage it. And it just isn't the same over a video call. Yeah. One of the things you can do, I think you can be way more time efficient using things like video, because you cut out the things that I think really build the relationship. And that's the stuff you dovetail on each end. It's the get to know people for the football team they support, or what hobbies they've got, or where they like to go on holiday, and what their wife or husband's name is, or whatever. This is all the stuff that humanizes everything.
Yeah.
And you become work colleagues. I think when you're having these Zoom calls or Teams calls or whatever the technology everyone uses, you don't bother with that bit. You get straight down to business. And I think it's, for me, I don't know how you replace. I certainly haven't figured it out yet, and maybe I never will. I don't know how you replace that, building that culture of a small team where everybody's in it together. Everybody's completely reliant on everyone else, because if one person falls down, the whole machine slows down. I think it's far harder to build that micro culture without having the human interaction than perhaps it is when you've got natural momentum of a massive organization. You've got incredible brand, you've got all of those kind of things. You've probably also got, I think this is another key element in those business, you've got far more layers of management and what I would call overlay roles. Overlay roles whereby they might be focused on looking after staff well-being, or you might have someone that just takes care of graduates, or you might have someone that's you can't have all those things in a small business and a startup. You just, one, there's no place for it in that business because you don't have the resources in terms of people and so on and so forth. And also, there's not really a job for those individuals till you get to a certain size and scale. So it's difficult. I personally, my view, if you ask me about the way the world will go, and this won't be the same for everybody, but it's certainly the way we're going to go, will be having a really nice hybrid blend of working from home, working at customer sites, working in the office when we need to be. But it's really, and I'm going to steal somebody's thunder with this phrase, and if he's watching, he'll know who he is that said this. Work is something we do, it's not a place that we go anymore. And I absolutely believe in that, and I think that's the reality of it. But interestingly, my guys already were super excited when we decided, you know what, let's open up the office and get back in there.
Yeah.
And have been in every day since, by choice. Not because I'm
they miss
forcing
the
it.
social interaction,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
And it's a
the
newish team.
everything about it, the idea sharing, the collaboration.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you can't buy that. I'm with you. I don't, you know, do I think you can be more efficient over video? Yes, because you can do more of them. Do I think you can be as effective as face to face? No. I
No.
just don't. And
I agree with
yes, you can see the body language, and yes, you can see the nuances, all that sort of stuff. But there's nothing better than actually having someone real life in person, and also whether it's a beer after work or a coffee or by the water cooler or whatever it is, up and down the lift or whatever it is, those additional conversations that you suddenly do find out a bit more about. So I'm totally agree with that, Ross.
I also think as well, you know, in building the people buy from people. They do. They, you know, from the start of mankind, they have. We're social creatures. We like to build relationships and bonds and those kind of things. And quite often, I mean, the amount of deals that you would have done over the year, and I've certainly done loads, where actually you sit in a meeting room with a bunch of people around, and you go through the specifics, the contract, the scope of works, the deliverables, all of that kind of really important stuff. But the deal's done on the stairs while you're walking into his car or her to her car. That's where the deal's done, right? It's a case of where do we need to be? But because you've got that rapport, you've got that relationship, you can't replace that walk down the stairs to the car park on a video call. You just, you know, and that's the thing that I believe will be missing. That might be a generational thing though. Future generations, it might not be as important a deal to them.
You're showing your age now, Ross. Basically.
Yeah. Well, you know, look, as I said, I try and always learn. I try and always evolve. I like what I like. I don't like what I don't like. But maybe that will change in the future. But I think it's a way to go.
No.
As I said, I think it's at our core we're social beings, and we like that human interaction.
Definitely. My last question for you, and it's a bit of a, you don't have to share everything, but I would like you to share the plan for your business with the listeners and where you see it going over the next 1 to 2 years, or what your aspirations are.
Yeah, I don't have a timeline in terms of an end date. I never do that. I think if you set something up like this, and again, I understand why some people do, but I think if you set something up like this, you perhaps might make different decisions to the ones that I want to make. So there's no end date for this. What I want to build really is an organisation that is, as I said, revered. It has a certain quality of brand associated with it, and that brand is associated with the fact that what we do very, very well. We do it with a high degree of integrity. We do it with you know, a smile on our faces and a bit of fun while we're trying to do it. And we ultimately execute and deliver for our customers, and that's what I want to build. And I want to build an organisation whereby, as I said, people want to come and work with us and work for us because it's a fun place to be, in the sense of, you know, not the you know, maybe the table tennis tables and the pool tables, all those things, maybe they're not so prevalent moving forward, but there's other things you can do that create that culture of sort of work hard, play hard, have a good time while you're doing it. We spend a lot of time at work, so I think it's important to like it. So that kind of culture rich mentality. But what's, I guess, you know, equally important than any of that, or perhaps slightly more important than any of that, is that our customers respect what we do for them, because we do what we say we're going to do, we execute, and we add incremental value to their business. And if I can do all those things, if I can build something that's got a brand recognition that says quality, that executes what it says it's going to execute, does what we say on the tin, metaphorically speaking, and we're a bunch of good guys and girls along the way that do what we say we're going to do, that would be success for me. And I don't want to put numbers and those kind of things on it, because I do have a numbers plan, of course I do, but to me that's secondary to those things. And if we can do those things right, then the numbers will take care of themselves. It's always been my belief, and I think so far we've had a pretty good start on, you know, in that approach. And as we look to grow, as we look to bring more people on, and grow the team and so on and so forth, the important thing for us is getting people that buy into that culture, buy into that ethos, that buy into this kind of customer success obsession thing that we're trying to achieve here. If they don't, they won't fit in our culture. right? So it's important that we get the right people to do that. But I'm also a believer in that most people at their core want to do a good job. I don't think anyone gets up in the morning and says, I want to do a shit job today. I think everyone gets up in the morning. Now, whether you can or you can't is different to that. But I think most people, do want to do that. And, and that's what I want to build. That's what success looks like for me, I think, is to build, that business and that culture. And if I can do that, I'll be a happy man.
Yeah, brilliant. Ross, you've been a great guest. Thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.